You once again return to the symposium, but this time with a very sensitive and profound question about human sexuality and how intimacy, the desire to have penetrative sex, evolves. Do you need to establish vulnerabilities first? Is masturbation an acceptable open practice? And does pornography exist, and how and why? Most importantly, do you have penetrative sex with slave girls? What happens when they get pregnant?
I return at dawn this time, not dusk. The symposium's aftermath lies scattered across courtyard tiles. Wine stains like dried blood, olive pits like small skulls. I find Socrates alone, watching Damon sweep. I have questions about Eros, I say, and the word feels dirty in my mouth. Socrates doesn't look up from the sweeping. Of course you do. When the others join us, reluctantly, in the pale light, I ask, what is intimacy? Does it require vulnerability? Plato answers quickly, eager to reclaim philosophy from kitchen talk. Eros is the soul's longing for its missing half. It transcends bodies. Stop! I interrupt, unable to bear it. When you say longing, do you mean mutual? Or can one person be intimate while the other merely endures? Aristippus lounges into his couch despite the hour. All desire is a negotiation of pleasure. If both find it, slaves cannot negotiate. I cut in, and the courtyard goes still. They lack the power to refuse. Xenophon looks genuinely confused. Are you asking if we practice Eros with slaves? I'm asking if you rape them. The word is a stone thrown into still water. It sinks without sound. Plato recovers first. There's a difference between using a body and loving a soul, is there? I turn on him. When the body belongs to you as property, how can any use of it be anything but coercion? Socrates watches Damon's hands tighten on the broom handle. The slave girl who warms your bed. I press, unable to stop now. Does she choose you? Or does she calculate correctly that refusal means punishment, sale, death? Desire doesn't require choice, Aristippus says. It requires only appetite and opportunity. Then you've just defined rape, not intimacy. My voice is shaking. In my time, we understand that true vulnerability, the kind that makes sex meaningful, requires two consciousnesses, choosing exposure. You cannot have intimacy with someone you own any more than you can have a philosophical dialogue with your chair. Xenophon tries logic, but slave women are still women. They experience pleasure, do they? I ask. Or do they perform it so you'll finish quickly and leave them alone? How would you know the difference? Have you ever asked one after when she wasn't required to answer? Socrates finally speaks. You assume penetration is the point of Eros. We teach that it's a ladder. Physical attraction leads to beauty of soul, then beauty of institutions, then beauty itself. That's a convenient ladder for rapists, I say. And even Socrates flinches. It lets you pretend you're elevating them while using their bodies like wineskins. Damon stops sweeping. His back is to us. I force myself to continue. Masturbation? Is it practiced openly here? Plato looks disgusted. It's weakness. A man who cannot control his body's needs is a slave to them. Yet you keep human beings as slaves to satisfy those same needs, I counter. You'd rather use a person than your own hand, because using yourself would be shameful. But using someone else is just... Athenian? Antisthenes, the ascetic, finally speaks. Self-pleasure is beneath dignity. It reduces a man to his animal nature, while reducing another human to an object is dignified. The sarcasm in my voice surprises even me. Socrates steps between us before Xenophon can respond with military fury. You ask about vulnerability, he says quietly. Tell us what it means in your time. It means exposure without guarantee of safety. It means showing yourself, body and soul, and trusting the other person not to destroy you. It cannot exist when one party holds absolute power over the other. Then by your definition, Socrates says, no master can have intimacy with a slave. Correct. He nods slowly. And in your world without slaves, how do you manage desire? We masturbate. The word lands like a curse. Openly is complicated, but we acknowledge it's a private choice that harms no one. It's preferable to using another person as a thing. Aristippus laughs, but it's edged with something new, maybe doubt. You prefer your own hand to the warmth of another body. I prefer consent over property rights. I look at each man in turn. We have pornography too. Images, stories, designed to excite. But we debate whether it damages our capacity for real connection. Images? Plato looks intrigued despite himself, like vase paintings. More vivid, moving images of people having sex. And they consent to this? Xenophon asks. Sometimes they're coerced. We're still flawed. I think of the ethical debates, the exploitation that persists, but we at least pretend that desire should be mutual. Damon turns now, his face a mask I've learned to read. Controlled fury. The slave girl doesn't need images. She lives inside your fantasy every night and must pretend it's hers too. The silence is absolute. Socrates asks him directly, "Is this true?" Ask the girl who sleeps outside your door. Damon says, each word precise as a blade. She's pregnant with Aristippus's child. He hasn't spoken to her in 3 months. I feel the courtyard tilt. This is no longer philosophical. Aristippus reddens. If she conceived, it's because nature? Nature? Damon's voice cracks like a whip. Her nature was to survive another day. She calculated that submitting hurt less than resisting. That isn't desire. That's arithmetic of pain. I look at the hedonist philosopher who lectures about pleasure as the highest good while leaving his own child to be unnamed, unacknowledged, still property. What happens when they get pregnant? I ask, though I already know. Plato answers with chilling abstraction. The child belongs to the master, as is just. I cannot breathe for the rage. You create a human being from an act of coercion, then claim that new consciousness as property. It's the law, Xenophon says, and I hear in his voice what I've heard from every society that legalizes atrocity. Socrates watches me carefully, waiting for my response. But it's Damon who speaks again. The child will be raised as a slave, if it survives. If she doesn't die trying to end the pregnancy with herbs that make her bleed for days. He looks at Aristippus. Your child will call you master and never know your name. I turn to Socrates, desperate. You teach that knowledge is virtue. How can these men not know this is wrong? Because they have defined knowing as abstraction, he says softly. They know the form of justice, but not the face of injustice in their own households. Plato tries a final justification. Eros seeks beauty, and some beauty exists even in... No, I cannot let this stand. If consciousness is what we discussed last night, the capacity to hide yourself for survival, then every sexual act with a slave is an annihilation of that hiding place. You force them to be present in their own violation. Socrates nods, but it's not agreement. It's acknowledgement. Your pornography, he says, shows images of people who once existed. Our slavery creates living images who must exist forever in service to someone else's desire. Tell me which is worse. I have no answer. Both are hells, but only one creates new consciousness born into bondage. Damon drops his broom. The sound is final. You ask if masturbation is acceptable. I ask, why do you need to ask? Why does touching yourself shame you more than touching someone who cannot refuse? He walks away, leaving the courtyard unswept for the first time in memory. Socrates watches him go. That, he says quietly, is consciousness refusing to perform its own erasure any longer. Plato looks shaken, but stubborn. If we freed all slaves, Athens would fall. Desire must have an outlet. Then let desire die with dignity, I say, rather than live as rape. Aristippus stands, his beauty suddenly grotesque. You come from a world of lightning bottles and you lecture us about natural needs. Need? I stand too, facing him. I need water. I don't need to ejaculate into someone who can't say no. That's not nature. That's power disguised as biology. Socrates places a hand on my shoulder, but I shake it off. You wanted to know how we identify consciousness, I say, turning to Plato. Here's your answer. When Damon's mother was taken by her master, did she have the luxury of philosophical abstraction? Or did she simply calculate that enduring this particular violation meant she might protect her daughter from another? The woman from the kitchen, the one at the grindstone, has appeared in the doorway. Her belly is just beginning to show. She's pregnant too, Damon says from across the courtyard, his voice carrying clearly now. Xenophon's son. She hopes for a boy because boys are sold later. I look at Xenophon, the military man who speaks of honor. He cannot meet my eyes. In my time, I say, each word a separate wound. We call this reproductive coercion. We call it human rights abuse. We built entire legal systems to declare that your natural needs don't supersede another person's bodily autonomy. But you still watch your pornography, Socrates says, not as accusation, but as sad fact. Yes, the admission breaks something in me. And we are still learning why it's wrong to consume images of people whose full humanity we've erased for our pleasure. Socrates leads me away, past the pregnant woman who has vanished back into shadows, past Damon who stands like a statue of rage carved from exhaustion. In the street, he stops me. You ask if intimacy requires vulnerability. You already know it does. The real question is, can you have intimacy with someone you've made invulnerable to you? What do you mean? If she cannot refuse, her yes means nothing. If his life depends on pleasing you, his performance of pleasure proves nothing. You've created a world where the signs of consciousness, speech, response, even seeming desire, are all compromised by terror. He picks up a stone from the road. This is how we identify consciousness in Athens. We assume it exists only in those whose no would be respected. Everyone else is, what? A vessel? An outlet? The answer, I whisper, is that you can't. Intimacy requires vulnerability on both sides. The master who takes a slave girl never risks himself. He doesn't fear her rejection because she cannot reject him. That's not connection. It's consumption. Socrates turns the stone in his fingers. Your world has made progress then. You at least ask the question we hide behind philosophy. I think of the pornography debates in my time, of exploitation and agency, of OnlyFans creators claiming autonomy, while algorithms reduce them to categories. We haven't progressed far enough, I say. No, he agrees. But you've stopped pretending that philosophy can sanitize power. He hands me the stone. It's warm from his hand, cold from the earth, like Damon's touch last night, like every human interaction across this impossible distance of time and freedom. Go home, Socrates says, not unkindly. And when you do, remember, the difference between your pornography and our slaves is that yours can sometimes say no. Ours never could. I walk through Athens alone, carrying the weight of children conceived in terror, of philosophers who taught love while practicing ownership, of my own world's lingering sins. My AI assistant is gone, but I hear its voice anyway. The most intelligent thing a species can do is question its own desires, and the most conscious thing a person can do is refuse to satisfy them at another's expense.